Now on Tucson Business Radio X, Heather Wilpern from the Tucson Metro Chamber and her guests for The Business Of.
Hello and welcome to the inaugural edition of The Business Of, where we'll focus on a different theme each month and how it relates to business in Tucson. I'm Heather Wilpern, the Director of Communications at Tucson Metro Chamber. And we're recording today this live podcast at Tucson Business Radio X studio inside the Stort Title building on Broadway Boulevard. This month's conversation will focus on the business of travel and the tourism industry in Tucson. It's amazing to think that so often when people think of travel, they're thinking of being under palm trees and not necessarily how it affects the economic impact of their own town. But the tourism industry is big business. And in fact, in Tucson, it ranks number 2 for economic impact, with aerospace and defense as number 1. So we will be talking about that a little bit today, and amazing statistics such as just in Pima County alone, there are 24,000 jobs that stem from the tourism industry. Think about all the restaurants, think about the hotels, people driving people from place to place. That all stems from tourism. So it's big business. So let's get the conversation started today. I'd like to introduce my 3 guests. And let's start with Misty Shafiqullah. She is actually the owner of Cruise Planners, but does much more than cruises. We'll learn about that coming up. And then also Dan Gibson. He's been around town for quite a while as the Senior Director of Communications at Visit Tucson. And then Chris Schmaltz, the General Counsel at the Tucson Airport Authority. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. Well done.
All of our names. Well,
that was
yours
impressive.
is tricky. Say yours yourself, Misty.
Misty Shafiqullah.
Right. And Wilpern. Who has a name like Wilpern? And then... Thank God for Gibson.
Yeah, I've got that going for me.
Yeah, well, that's easy to pronounce.
Yes, I aimed that way. I thought about it a lot.
The plan?
Just going, yeah, exactly. Ask my
that's
parents.
Very well done.
Yeah, for something
kudos to you.
Mildly generic.
For a generic last name.
It hides me in Google results too, which is a nice. It's me and a dead Canadian nature photographer.
My name. There's a few other Schmaltzes, and my name ends up on the page 4 or 5. Yeah, so it's good.
There are more Wilperns out there than I actually realized, but they're mostly in Germany. Anyway, what I love about the 3 guests that I have here today is each one of you represents a different aspect of travel or tourism. So, for example, Misty, you're mostly having people leave Tucson, but one of the beauties of that is whenever you travel, I think one of the best things for me personally is appreciating Tucson more and more every time I leave. So no matter how much of the world I've seen, and I've seen a fair amount, I love coming back to Tucson. And so...
Yes, Heather, I love that I can send people out of Tucson to see the world, but then I've also introduced Southern Arizona and Tucson to a lot of my clients that are coming from out of state. A lot of those people end up loving Arizona so much that they will end up moving here later. But it's a great opportunity. It's a great home base and a place to represent when we're out in the world and talking about where we come from and where we live.
That's exactly right. And it's being an ambassador when you are from Tucson and you're going out and about. The more we say where we're from and what we love about it, we let people know that it's more than tumbleweeds or whatever their expectation of Tucson is. And I love that at Visit Tucson, Dan, now you have that Certified Tourism Ambassador Program, and that's about being ambassadors in our own town with our visitors. And it's the same sort of thing, but on a local level.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's changed in the last 5 years or so in the way that Visit Tucson approaches this, and other destination marketing organizations, a sort of fancy term for what we do, is that as much of it is about outreach to the community itself as well as you want people in the city itself or the municipality to be proud of the destination, right? Mm-hmm. As sort of media has dissipated in some ways, and some of the ways that we connect to people have changed. you think about Tucsonans being out and posting interesting things on Instagram of events they went to, or sharing with people around them, like what they've done or what's exciting about the space. It goes a long way. And it's funny because we have, our you have some experience with it, our visitor guide. It was the strategy for a long time is just get all of them out as much as possible. But now it's, get some of the community as well. You want people to fall in love with the place that they live, because that's the most like direct. A lot of people travel because they want to visit friends or family, and you want those friends and family in Tucson to be, enthusiastic about the sense of place.
Exactly. So what I was saying was, so Misty is sending people away, but then they'll
hopefully through the airport.
Right, exactly.
Yes,
I'm getting to you next. Exactly, I'm getting to you next. And then Dan is attracting people to Tucson, but then Chris, you're sending people to and from Tucson.
That's right.
Yeah, but the airport is more than just getting people to and from Tucson, though. So tell us more about what you have going on.
That's exactly right. We obviously are an airport, and so business travelers as well as tourism, etc., people fly through and arrive on the airlines that serve our community through our airport. But we have many other users of our airport, right? We have the Air National Guard base that's at the airport. They use our runways and they share our runways just like the commercial airlines. We have a robust general aviation community that fly both at Tucson International as well as Ryan Airfield. And Tucson Airport Authority operates that airport system, both Tucson International as well as Ryan. Right. So we have those users, and we have our tenants. Raytheon is a tenant, Bombardier is a tenant, Aerovation is a tenant. We have many aerospace and defense-related tenants as well, and so they are also users of our airport. We like to say, and I like to say in my work that I do, part of what I do is as general counsel, I advise the board and the executive team, et cetera, but I also help to coordinate and lead our government affairs effort. And part of that communication effort is to make sure that our public policy folks, legislators at the state level and at the federal level, understand that the airport is an economic engine. We're not just travelers in and out, right? We are that primarily because that's what we do and that's what we're good at. But we also have land that we lease to our users, and the other users of the airport employ people here in our community. And so
that's what we like to hear at the chamber.
Yeah, it's a key element of what we do is making sure that our tenants are successful, because if they're successful, they are employing people who are receiving high wages and spending that money here as well as on cruises and elsewhere. So.
Exactly. And I've been to the airport recently, and I'm loving all the improvements. So tell us about that if someone hasn't been lately, some of the things that have happened.
Yeah, if you haven't been to the airport recently, what are you doing with your life? Please come to the airport. Road
trips are great too, but the airport's amazing.
The airport is amazing. Yeah, we just last year we finished a $20 million plus refurbishing of the terminal. And the work is never done. So once we finish that, the upgrades in the terminal are dramatic in terms of relocating the checkpoints for both A and B. They make it much easier for folks to arrive and get through airport security, the TSA, to get to their gate. We also have done improvements with Gate C. Now we have A concourse, B concourse, and now C concourse. That C concourse was using a facility that we weren't using at the time, but we have developed it to attract any airline actually can use Gate C. Okay. But it's primarily targeted at those ultra low cost carriers to use, because there's different level of amenities in Gate C.
Right.
It attracts the Allegiance of the world, the Frontiers of the world, Sun Country, that kind of thing.
Right.
The only airline that's currently using Gate C is Allegiant. But as I said, it's open to any of the airlines that are operating in and out of our airport now.
And I saw just today that Frontier is coming back with the nonstops to Denver a week early or something like that, and they're amazing sales. So I went online and checked it out. I have a daughter who goes to college in Denver. And I remember actually when she was saying, I absolutely want to go out of state for college, I printed out the map of nonstop flights and said, well, if we can't drive there easily, pick one of these nonstop flights. I don't
Yes.
want you stuck somewhere coming home for Christmas.
November 14th, they are back and flying direct flights to Denver. And the fares are ridiculously low.
That's great.
Yes, but so get on the website and catch them while you can because they do sell out. I will be using that flight to go to Colorado to visit family and go skiing, etc.
Fantastic.
So, yep, for sure.
That's great. So, Misty, tell us a little bit more about your background. Is so interesting how you used to be a civil engineer and worked for the government for many, many years. And you started your travel agency as a side hustle, really. But now you're retired and you're going full steam ahead with this.
Yeah. So, Heather, I realized that I was getting close to completing my 30 years of federal service.
Wow.
And so about 6 years ago, I went to Pima Community College and I got an associate's in business with a travel and tourism focus, which was essential for someone who got their degree in engineering and really had little exposure to business classes. I had, of course, learned on the job a lot of business principles, but it was great to go back to school and learn about the travel and tourism industry and being a business owner. So I ended up buying a franchise with Cruise Planners, which is a award-winning franchise based in Fort Lauderdale. And I've been working that business now part-time, but I'm getting ready to launch the business full-time in January since
That's
I recently
exciting.
retired. So it's been a great opportunity to explore all of the opportunities for travel, whether it be land-based or cruises,
Sure.
that type of thing, and get to know some of the suppliers, some of the destinations, build up my own education, certifications, and that type of thing.
Right. You're gaining a lot of letters after your name now, I noticed.
Yes.
You keep
yes.
adding on.
Exactly. I've gotten involved with different associations that are involved in travel, like CLIA, which is the Cruise Line Association, and the Travel Advisors Association, that type of thing, which has been a great opportunity. But one of the things that I was lacking on was, where do I start?
Right.
And so I reached out to Tucson Metro Chamber, and Carrie introduced me to Tucson Startup,
Right.
which I had never heard of.
Startup
And
Tucson.
for those who haven't heard of Startup Tucson, they are a nonprofit that really assists the entrepreneurs in Tucson.
Right.
So in order to become part of that group, you have to go to a startup lab, and they offer these monthly. So I went to the startup lab, and they introduced me to the one-page business plan, which I had never heard of. And I found it to be a great tool for me because I've got a lot of different niches that I'm
Sure.
exploring in my business. And so the one-page business plan was a wonderful tool to explore maybe a certain destination and how
To
I'm
help
going
you focus.
Exactly.
Right. To concentrate your marketing.
That's exactly right. The Tucson Startup Tucson also introduced me to SCORE, and I ended up going to a couple of their classes at the library. And lo and behold, the Tucson Library has a great amount of resources for the business community. So that was another part of this web that came
That's fantastic.
to me. And then to bring it full circle, my involvement with Startup Tucson enabled me to join the chamber at the startup
Right.
membership level.
Right, and that's a new thing for us, actually. We wanted to make it so anyone, whether they're a recently graduated student who came up with their business plan and got their business license but doesn't really know what to do next, or a startup company like yourself, where so much of what makes a business successful is the relationships you build and the connections you make. And so with the chamber, we have so many opportunities to connect with people. And so we realize that not everyone can come in at the highest level, but even if you can get your foot in the door with the students and startups level, you can at least start building those relationships. And so
and that's
you were
been
one of our
key.
first two, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think I was the second, and it's
Right.
been an amazing opportunity
that's great
for
to hear.
networking and exposure.
Yay.
The chamber has they put up these monthly happy hours called Chamber Exchange, and I've been to a couple of those. They had this great event called the Speed Networking that they offer, which was a lot of fun. In an hour, I met over 16 other business owners.
Right.
Talked
and it's
about
so
my
high
business.
energy,
Yes.
but
an hour goes by so fast, but that was a wonderful experience. And then just by being a member, of course, I've got a presence on the Chamber's website. So I'm able to post travel deals, events, news about my company, that sort of thing. And what I'm really looking forward to is the Chamber's offering of a ribbon cutting ceremony. Even for those of us that have a home-based business, they will host this at their office. And it's just a way to get the word out that I'm in business and what I'm about. So the Tucson Metro Chamber and the Startup Tucson Partnership has been a great foundation for my success.
That. Yay, we love hearing that. That's great. And ribbon cuttings are really a lot of fun, too. And the whole proclamation reading where everybody's saying their whereas, you'll have to go to one to know what the heck I'm talking about. But they're a lot of fun, I promise. So, Dan, let's hear more about you. So the Visit Tucson has just launched this 10-year master plan. It's been a big deal, a ton of research.
Yeah.
Just tell us what you've discovered from that and what your next steps are.
Well, it's interesting. I think, as we're talking about tourism, I think you mentioned the number of jobs, and I think it's hard to sort of get your head around it because it is sort of like an invisible business sometimes. And I think, I talk to people and they're like, well, people are going to come no matter what. And I'm like, well, there's a degree of that's true. But but it does, enhancing that business and really talking about it is, it's work. It takes work. People can make an infinite number of travel decisions. I was in Philadelphia this weekend at a work thing, and and you're just looking at the airport, and you're like, oh, from Philadelphia, a city which doesn't have the biggest airport, they can go to Paris or St. Croix or fill in the blank, right? It's really competitive, and that's just talking nonstop destinations. Then you add one-stop destinations, all these things, and so it's really just how do you get in front of people? How do you it's a $2.46 billion business in what visitors spend in Pima County every year, and we work hard to sort of increase that. So the master plan is really this: where do we go from here? How is this business changing? Tourism is changing quite a bit. What are the things that Tucson can do better, the sort of Metro Tucson area? What are the things that will attract the next generation of travelers? What will bring more conventions to Tucson? What will bring more leisure business to Tucson? Sort of this whole scope of things. And we don't want to rest on our laurels or sort of pretend that this is always going to be the same way it is. Before they were called Convention and Visitors Bureaus. That's like not that long ago.
I remember that MTCVB.
Yeah,
I would give monthly seminars on what the internet was and why everyone should have an email. And yes, other people will have emails too.
Wildly overrated, but yes.
This is a browser.
No idea.
Yeah, and so it was like
podcast?
that.
What's a podcast?
Back then, it was convention was the big part of it. Really, convention was the part that came first, and now we're talking. Lately, it's been destination marketing organizations. Now, we talk about destination management organizations.
Right. It's changing.
Right. It's not just the idea of talking about Tucson. It's also how do we develop more opportunities for tourists? There's things that are almost entirely out of our control, like hotel development and things like that.
Sure.
But we can talk about Visit Tucson was a part of launching Sonoran Restaurant Week,
That's great.
And so it was an idea of like, how do we talk about restaurants in a way that gives people a hook, especially from Phoenix, to come down and experience great Tucson food, working with events now. And so the master plan, voluminous, and you can read it all on visittucson.org if you want to delve into a lot of the suggestions. It's like a 200-page document, and it's going to mean a lot of committees, which are great, and moving on from there. But it's these main foci of trying to establish Tucson as a capital of well-being in a lot of different varieties of what that means. Enhancing, still continuing on the City of Gastronomy path, which has been such an amazing sort of boost for what we've done. And then the one that I've been working on in particular lately is really trying to. Tucson has such incredible bicycling assets.
Yes.
it's sort of getting us on that sort of top 5 list of great places to ride. And
I've noticed
it's been a push. It really has been a big thing. What we sort of did with food, which the numbers are really outstanding. In the last 3 years, spending of visitors in Pima County on restaurants went up $48 million, which is and that's real spending happening in this community. You know what I mean? It's jobs that were created. It's local, and with Tucson being about like 60 to 70% of the restaurants in Tucson are locally owned, which is a higher percentage than nearly anywhere in the country.
Oh, that's interesting.
More of that money really is staying in the community. But now we're trying to sort of apply that same thing to bicycling.
Right.
Tucson has an incredible amount of opportunities, from road biking,
now
urban
that
biking.
the loop is finished.
Yeah, which is incredible. Mountain biking, gravel riding, all these things.
Have you seen, we at the airport, I suspect, because I think a lot of businesses are having to confront this, is that my guess is the plan reflects a multi-generational approach.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you can't just rely on sort of the standard, the Old West is the attractor anymore. And I very much appreciate the idea that we're promoting Tucson, and certainly at the airport we do this because we're branching our marketing into influencers.
Sure.
And utilizing influencers to appeal to a younger generation to talk about how easy it is and how great the food is at the airport and how easy it is to get in and out of the Tucson airport.
That's a fact.
Because you want to they don't have a car, you take an Uber, you get to the airport, you get in and out, and then you can have a great meal at the airport. And so
I saw Happily Pink blog did a this weekend.
Yes.
She went to Bellingham, I believe.
That's right.
And so it really is a brave new world in that space.
For sure.
Because I mean, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would be like, oh, we're going to buy an ad in Sunset.
Right.
Like, we're going to buy a full page ad in Sunset.
Right.
We're going to send out some visitor guides, and then we're just going to wait for the people to come in, and it's going to be amazing.
Our marketing team has two, I'll say, younger people, certainly younger than me, and they are active in this space.
Yeah.
They are marketers who want to tap into sort of exactly that. We absolutely appeal to sort of the leisure, older generation sort of traveler, and we have approaches and parts of our marketing plan that appeal to sort of that segment. But certainly they are very focused on making sure that the segment that's tapped into Instagram and YouTube and those kinds of outlets are hearing the message about the Tucson airport and the ability to get in and out and go see destinations that are awesome.
Yeah.
I'm hearing more and more about how video truly is where everything is driving next. So are you making more efforts in the video? Well, I know Visit Tucson is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it really is. I think about how my daughter is 11, my son is 17, but they largely interact with the internet through video, whether that's YouTube primarily, but also Instagram. They look at stories, but don't go through the feed. Right. Or my daughter, the internet that matters to her most is TikTok. Now, we have not gotten to TikTok levels of marketing yet. I mean, I guess we probably will at some point. Right. But it really is like, how do you connect to people where they can have this sort of visceral connection to say like, oh, that's what it looks like, and I can see myself there. And that's the biggest part. And so we, that's telling stories about local merchants. We did a video series that's out now that's with HF Coors and Whiskey Del Bob.
HF Coors. I pick up plates at restaurants. And look at the bottom.
Wildly underrated. Like that business
should go
exists.
The first Saturday of every month at 7:30 in the morning.
You're ruining that for us, but that's fine.
Yeah, good job.
Can you delete that?
Good job.
Mark?
But why would you say that out loud?
Sorry.
Oh, nobody's listening
I know.
to this.
I almost
It's fine.
don't want to tell people
We'll be
about
fine.
Tucson too, because I want to keep it all to myself.
It is a fascinating thing. This town has that vibe at times where it's like, well, why would you go tell people about it?
Right.
Today,
we want them to succeed. Yeah.
Because it's free money. I mean, that's what I always tell people. It's like, if you'd like nice roads and parks and schools and all of these assets, take in the $2 billion and like, we'll take it. Yeah, it's all good stuff.
Hey, real quick, back to bikes. I remember speaking with Dan Hatfield isn't he?
Yes,
yeah.
he is.
At a Visit Tucson.
My former coworker.
Meeting. Yeah. And he was talking about how they're trying to make it easier to travel with your own bike.
Oh, yes.
What's happening with that?
Dave Hatfield and I are working on this. This is such a fun project. So
that was a while ago. That was a good...
It's finally coming together, which is great news. But in the next, who knows, 6 months or so, the idea is that we will have, most likely in the baggage area, a disassembly station for bicyclists. So some airports, Portland, San Francisco, Seattle, a couple others, not many, to be honest, have a station in which you can, it gives you an opportunity to take your bike and break it down so that you can put it in a box or a bag.
I see them coming through the airport terminal all the time where they've essentially disassembled their bike into their large component parts, put it into a case that they're going to travel with, and they're pulling it along. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're great. No.
Does it go in the belly of the plane?
Yes.
And that's safe.
You
it's
check it.
Not injured
you check it in the plane. It's not injured. You get to your destination. They reassemble
and you're on your own
on
bike,
the destination. And we want people to come into Tucson and do that at the airport.
You'll be amazed the number of travelers that, especially who come into the city now, who are not going to get a car at all. I mean, they're going to bike the entire way. And you know, the proximity of the loop to the airport is really helpful in that sense as well. And so we want to give people that opportunity. If you want to ride in and out of in the airport, we want to make that as simple as possible. So the idea, and thank goodness for the airport authority for being so helpful with this, because this is like one of these, Dave Hatfield and I used to sit next to each other when he edited Inside Tucson Business and I edited The Weekly. So he gets the brunt of my bad ideas all the time. But he's like, yeah, you know what? I think we can do that one. And so we're looking at a placement, but it also it's a signifier to bike tourists that we care about them.
That's exactly right.
So I came in through Portland. I didn't bring my bike, but I saw the station and I'm like, oh, Portland cares about bikes. And the destination cares about bikes.
I love that.
So it'll be a display, and we'll have bike guides there as well, and maps.
So it is happening. It's just a matter of time.
It's a little bit of a logistical thing, but I mean, you're having to drill holes in the floor and all this stuff. And so, turns out at the airport. Mildly picky about construction. It's not the easiest thing to pull off.
Mildly picky about where things go that we're going to affix to the floor or the wall.
Exactly. Yes,
yes, we tend to be that way.
So, Misty, let's get back to you a little bit. I'm sure you've put together, whether it be biking tours or all sorts of things. Tell us about some of the most unusual packages you have assembled for people.
Well, there's been a lot of them. They're all individual, of course. And they're all fun to put together because I get to live vicariously through my clients. I'm doing all this research, whether I've been there in the past and I'm revisiting it in my mind, or places I've never been, and so I really need to dig in deeper.
Right.
One of the fun trips I put together, though, was for a really dear friend, and it was for her and her husband and their honeymoon. And it was a second marriage for both. And so I put together a kind of a la carte, if you will, trip to Italy for them. And that involved getting them all of their flights, their trains, their transfers to and from the airport, all of their hotels, resorts, their tours. And then I introduced them to the concept of a honeymoon registry. And I've
seen more and more of that, and I love that idea.
It's a great idea, for example, for a couple that has been married before, so they don't need any of the usual registry items. And so this gave them an opportunity to help with the cost of that trip and get everyone kind of excited and following their honeymoon trip when they went. So that was a favorite.
That's great. And especially because you're going to get so much more out of an experience than you are from a serving platter.
Exactly.
Or whatever from,
It is changing that way. I mean, I think that that people, especially young millennials and post-millennials and all these groups of people, they really do value experiences like everything else. And so you look at it and they're like, well, I'd much rather have...
It's all about the experience. It's all about the Instagram opportunity. It's all about, I'm going somewhere and no one else has ever been, and I'm going to be able to share this on social media, and then everyone's going to be very interested in where I went and they're going to want to go. So... It's very much like that. Experiences and actually people traveling so that they might be able to volunteer in a destination or that type of experience. So it is very evolving, and the reasons behind people's travel and really what they're looking to get out of their personal leisure travel.
And speaking of leisure, Dan was kind enough to write an article in our Chamber Edge magazine about bleisure travel.
That's what I was doing in Philly. I was going to mix it up.
And I do that as often as I can. And I suggest it. Why not add a few days to your business trip and get to know a city a little bit better?
For better or for worse, that's how a lot of people are. I mean, this is some people's vacation, is the evening of after a conference,
exactly,
or adding a couple days or things like that.
Makes me sad.
I know, it makes me sad too.
That's some people's vacation. Hopefully not.
You should use it.
Yeah, it's reality.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Always use your vacation days.
Yes,
every single
always
last one.
use your
Although
vacation days.
I've always had coworkers who have ample unused vacation days, and I think that they should be penalized for that. That's a crime in my book. I always want more. I'm a fan.
Chris and I will take them. That's fine.
I'd be happy to.
With the federal government, a lot of people used to be in the use or lose category at the end of the year, where they were going to lose their vacation time if they didn't use it. And I always subscribe to the earn and burn. I'm going to earn it. I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
And so I tend to get through life because I'm thinking about my next vacation and I'm excited about the next one. When that one's over, I'm planning the next one.
I have to admit, however, though, that I am guilty of I'm going to a conference in D.C. I'm going up on the Hill to meet various people, and then I stay an extra night because I have friends in D.C. I practiced in D.C.
Right.
And so you take that extra day to go to the Smithsonian or whatever. Exactly.
I think it makes perfect sense to do that.
Yep.
It's just, it's funny when it's like people aren't even taking that day.
Right. They go right back home.
I went somewhere.
They're on a 5:30 flight.
Yeah.
Like, what?
How to catch that flight back to Tucson.
Right.
Or wherever. So.
Exactly.
I think it's interesting, though. I mean, I think you see these trends in the sort of travel advisor, travel agent, like for millennials and, again, all the groups younger than that having that advisor or someone who can handle all of those details is really coming back.
It really
there was a
is.
trend. I mean, there was some years where it was like all the travel agencies were closing down, all this stuff, but
they were all brick and mortar.
Yeah.
And then they went away, and now it is really growing. And I think part of that is there is so much information out there online.
It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, and it's time consuming. And so if you can have someone who's not only going to give you personalized service, but be your personal advocate when or if things go wrong. If you've got someone who's going to be helping you navigate through some canceled flights or help get you out of a hotel that doesn't quite meet your expectations or something, it's nice to know that you have someone, because you're not always going to have that if you booked it online. You're not going to have a body or a person to go back and talk to and help you navigate through these things. So I think that having a travel advisor is coming back in vogue, and it really is a time saver and gets the traveler the value that they might not get if they went out on their own and just tried to put it all together themselves.
Right, because I'm sure you do have some perks that you have.
Yes, we have access to deals. We have access to groups. Oftentimes, it's not that you're part of a group when you travel, but the travel advisor has put a group together and you get to avail yourself of that. A lot of times that comes with some extra amenities, just if you're booking in their group space. We also have an opportunity to book early and have a savings maybe through early booking that the client might not find online themselves.
Right.
We also have access to airline consolidators, which doesn't really help you out if you're flying domestically, but certainly there are deals out there when you're flying internationally that we can help guide our clients to that they would never be able to find otherwise. So I do think it's coming back, and it is evolving, and it is all about influencers, and it is all about social media and content. And I've been very excited. It's all very new to me as an older generation, and interacting with Startup Tucson and a lot of these young folks who they grew up with this technology. And so having the ability to kind of lean on them and find out what are they doing, how are they doing it, and to start to put that into play, because it is such a new business world out there.
Right.
In some ways, it's not. It's funny because I think there's elements of that aren't different at all, right? It really is still like people want to catch up to a narrative, some sort of story they can see themselves a part of. I mean, it's difficult to sort of parse that at like the 15 seconds of whatever attention span people have. Right. It's just like give people something they can connect to, and they just want to see it more personal. I think it's just because it's broken down these like you can't. All the brands are sort of have dissolved and none of that stuff matters anymore. It's just like, well, I want to see a person who looks like me, who feels like the sort of things I want to do, and I want to see them in Paris. Like I want to know what they like, because it's the infinite. There's too much. It's just too much to process.
Or see people who don't look like me, who are having experiences like through their lens that I may want to experience, but I have no idea what it's about or how to get there or what to do about it. But then I get to sort of vicariously live through a different perspective, different cultural perspective, et cetera, to see sort of what that experience is and help me decide, okay, I want to do that. And that's the what you offer to folks is a curated approach, which I totally appreciate, because that's the paradox of our time, right? Is that we have access to all the information all the time. Right. And that is the problem, is that we can access it. I can access it on my phone right now. A trip to Italy, except it's a million websites offering a million different ways to get there, a million different things to do that.
And how do you compare the apples and the oranges?
That's
and then there are the horror stories where someone has gone out online. I just heard on social media a big group was going to Peru, and then I just saw where she posted somehow they must have gotten involved with someone who was not scrupulous, and their whole trip is canceled. So there's all these things out there, and if you don't really know who you're dealing with, unfortunately, you could get caught up in something like that.
For sure.
Exactly.
For sure.
Well, let's bring it back to the economics of Tucson a little bit. So one of the things that is so important, but people might not realize the how or the why, is the Fly Tucson First aspect of things.
Yes.
And tell us more about that.
That campaign is really had its origins with business leaders, Howard Stewart, and the Tucson Metro Chamber's Public Policy Committee, which I am on.
Thank you very much.
And a small group of us sort of put together the effort to really focus people's attention on choosing to fly out of the Tucson International Airport. Right. One of our challenges, obviously, is that there is a very nice, very large airport to the north.
What do you mean?
I don't know that people make a decision to drive to fly out of for a variety of reasons. Yes, part of the goal of Fly Tucson First is to get people to think about all the components of making the choice to drive to the north to fly out of that airport versus the economics of cheaper parking in Tucson, ease of getting onto the flight, the economics of parking at the Tucson airport versus parking at the other airport.
I think it's a third
the
price.
It can vary, but it's cheaper for sure.
For sure.
And then also the pledge is targeted at business leaders making the decision to evaluate the costs associated with flying out of Tucson versus flying out of another airport, and all the factors of cost that go into allowing their employees or encouraging their employees to fly from Tucson versus another airport, because there is gas costs associated with that. There's wear and tear on a vehicle. There is the time associated with doing that in the business day. Exactly. All of that has a cost associated with it. And so the idea behind the Fly Tucson First pledge, especially for business leaders in Tucson, is to make that pledge that they're going to evaluate closely all of these factors to make a determination about and commit to, when they can, fly out of the Tucson airport. It's a
brilliant idea.
It's a hugely important campaign for us, and Clear Channel Outdoor helped to promote and put billboards up. You've probably seen them around town promoting the Fly Tucson First idea. And we've been promoting that pledge among business leaders. And why it's so important to have business leaders lead that effort is they are the decision makers with regard to, especially their teams of employees, flying out of Tucson for business travel. Large segment of our travelers are business travelers. And so if that component really makes a conscious decision to choose to fly out of Tucson, we will put a dent in that leakage that we have to the north.
I like that. And isn't there even more to it than that as far as the destinations that we have and even the nonstop flights that we have? If they're looking at the numbers, the traffic going to and from the Tucson airport, that will then affect the number of nonstops we have or the destinations we have. So what have been some experiences where things maybe started and then stopped, or we wish they would happen but haven't started yet?
Yeah, this is a prime example of the economics of air travel, right? Airlines control where they choose to start a route and choose to discontinue a route. Our team is talking to airlines all the time about new routes, additional routes, new planes, et cetera, all the time with all of our airlines. And so prime example of gaps in our system right now is we do not have nonstops to the East Coast. Right. We don't have nonstop to Washington, D.C. We don't have nonstop New York to New York. Right. We had that. We lost it. And it's a complicated economic issue, but the primary driver is filling the plane. Right? Supporting that route and making it work. What we always try to get people to remember is that if you choose to drive up north, that is a segment of your trip. Correct. So you are not avoiding you are creating a segment that you would otherwise not have if you flew out of Tucson. It is not simply a nonstop flight from that airport to the north. It is... You're adding a segment of travel from Tucson to Phoenix and then flying to where you want to go, where if you got on the plane in Tucson, much easier and cheaper to get to the Tucson airport, nice food at the airport, it's easy, you get on the flight, and then maybe you have to change planes, or maybe there's a segment that gets you where you want to go. Exactly. But all of that is you're through security, you don't have to worry about your car, et cetera, et cetera. So that's part of what we're promoting with Fly Tucson First and have been now for over almost 2 years, I think it is. So, yeah.
And we have luggage tags at the office if anyone would like Fly
please.
Tucson First swag.
Well, that hour-and-a-half drive gets you on that flight, that's a flight to Denver.
Yes.
You're in Denver, and then you can go wherever you want, or Los Angeles.
And here's a key piece of information that used to be, because this is the impact of ultra-low-cost carriers, frankly, is that it used to be that there was enough of a differential in cost of the average ticket out of our airport versus the other airport, that was part of the economics. People, especially for leisure travelers, part of the economics is how much, especially if you're traveling as a family, how much am I going to save in terms of if I fly from Phoenix? But now we have found that the average ticket price is only about a gap of $5.
Yeah, I've actually found a lot of instances where it was cheaper to fly out of Tucson than Phoenix.
Yes.
Me too. Yeah.
And more, actually, I'm finding that. So that's awesome for the Tucson.
It is. And filling those planes and people making conscious decision to fly out of Tucson only helps our efforts to market to our airlines saying, look at the planes are full. These routes work. Add another flight at a different time, or it can work to a new destination. And we're going to help you make it work by promotion, et cetera. We advertise not just here in town, but primarily in those other cities. We want them to see how awesome it is here in Tucson. During the Super Bowl last year, we put up a billboard in Minneapolis, and on the billboard was simply the weather in Tucson. Because the Super Bowl was in early February, and we put 70 degrees and sunny in Tucson on the billboard.
Yeah.
It was great.
I'll post a screenshot of the weather every once in a while for my East Coast friends and family, just to be mean.
We buy ads. It's kind of a funny, like a weird targeting thing, but we buy ads on the Weather Channel and weather.com. They're triggered by the temperature in direct markets, Minneapolis, Chicago. And so like if it drops below 20 degrees in Chicago, then you start seeing Visit Tucson ads on the weather site.
I love
that city looks at.
So smart.
And it's not even like, it doesn't point at them or like, you know,
Right.
it's like, hey dummy, what are you doing there? It's just like someone riding a bike.
Subliminal message that you plant. Yeah.
But it is, I mean, I think when people talk about, I don't think people realize like how good we have it in the Tucson airport as compared to cities our size.
I agree.
In other places. I've been in these airports, you know, and you're like, ours is better, like service wise and by the number of routes, but also just the difference of when a line is added, which allows us now Frontier, right, to Indianapolis. Allegiant, sorry, my mistake.
Yep.
Yeah, and that allows
Stole
us.
my thunder. I was going to make a big announcement. Yes, Indianapolis, Allegiant. Yes, that's their latest route.
But that allows us to market in that community.
Exactly.
And it functionally didn't before. It's very difficult to market in one-stop communities. It just becomes much more difficult because it adds an obstacle for their
I bet
their choices.
Bellingham would be a good market too.
Well, it allows us to market in Vancouver, British Columbia, which we couldn't before.
That's
really.
it. That's it. The Bellingham flight is really targeted at Canadians who drive down and fly here from Canada. And so that really is that market niche is trying to get more Canadian visitors and business people.
And what else do we have going on internationally as far as statistics? Who is coming here the most? What do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, it's the markets that you might sort of suspect. I mean, obviously, it's the biggest international market is Mexico, right? It's not even close. And then it really is Canada, the number of Canadians that come here.
I find that
because they have family here or they have homes here. There's complicated business stuff. But Western Canada in particular is a really great market for Tucson. And then it's UK. These are not in the right order, but UK, Italy, France, Germany are the main ones. Germans because they love cowboys. I mean, just to be really honest, there's like a German author who's like the sort of German version of Mark Twain who wrote about cowboys and Indians, and all Germans basically want to be cowboys and they come to the ranches. But yeah, in those markets, it is very much like getting out and hiking, biking, the Western stuff is like such a huge deal. You see stuff from China, Japan, Australia. I mean, there's smaller ones, but it's a pretty steep drop off after those main international markets. And so we have a tour. We have a tour representative who works with tour groups in those areas to bring in more tour groups because that's a big one. But then we have PR efforts in those countries as well.
We had a team from the airport we're talking to Mexican Airlines all the time.
Yeah, please. Yes.
We had a team in Mexico City 2 weeks ago, again, having discussions with an airline about restarting or getting new service back to Mexico because it's a huge market. And it's hugely important for us, and we want to cultivate that and encourage that. And so part of our air service development team efforts are very focused on reestablishing Mexican service, regular Mexican service.
In both directions, I would assume.
Absolutely.
I mean, our family goes to all parts of Mexico often, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's our neighbor. So.
It is a great, a plug for the chamber. And so the partnership that the Chamber, Visit Tucson, and the Airport Authority, and then Sun Corridor as well. Right. I mean, it really is this like long. It's a lot of work and the amount of effort that especially the airport is putting into that. But it really is like the business community coming together to say, like, these flights mean it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. These routes mean to Tucson, and so I understand. I've done it too, where I look at the Phoenix flight, but I'm like, these flights, having them full really is the key to
it's the key.
And they're looking at the math. I mean, it was funny when the Indianapolis announcement happened in the first place. I was like, are there really that many people flying? They're like, well, this many per day. It's this many people flying from Tucson to Indianapolis every day, and there's some guy looking at a laptop somewhere at each of these airlines saying that it's 220 people traveling from Tucson to New York. And, but the minute that jumps to Phoenix, and they know those people are coming from Tucson as well. But I want to say it was Allegiant that was looking at the number of people where they were looking at the website, where they were checking in even. Like there's the people are flying from Phoenix or Mesa or whatever to Indianapolis, but they were checking in Tucson. Oh. And so they're seeing like, this is such a big market.
Yeah, the route selector magic behind the curtain is often difficult to decipher.
Right.
And we're often sort of puzzled by, why would you not say yes to this route? It seems to make total sense. And then we were surprised by, oh, wow, you're going to put a flight into that location. Cool. Because they're coming here and they're spending their money, right? I mean, that's part of the equation.
The wild success of that Provo route. Like Provo, it's doing really incredibly well.
Yep.
It's like, it's amazing.
So do you have a wish list? Like, what is your number one destination where you wish we had another?
Part of my,
Because I have many.
Part of my, immediately to mind, because it directly affects my work, is I need a direct flight to the D.C. area.
That would work for me too. Could we do that?
I cannot do that.
It's the number 7 destination by money.
We would have that if I were in charge. Yeah. We would have that now.
Very close to where I'm from.
Yes. I practiced there. I lived there. I went to school there. I have many friends there, and I go there at least once a year, most times twice a year. Meet with the FAA, as well as go up on the Hill and meet with our delegation. And so, and every time we go visit our delegation, they ask me, "When are you going to get a direct flight, to DC?"
Right.
And I say, "Well, we're working on it." And literally, that is the actual factual answer. We're always working on it. Yes.
All right. That sounds good.
So DC is my number one.
All right. So what's next for your personal travel? Where are you heading?
We are actually headed to the Rhine to do
Your
a
life is so tricky.
Christmas markets river cruise in early December. I'm really excited about that.
That's wonderful. We're heading to Alamos, Mexico for Christmas.
Okay.
And then San Carlos for a few nights, coming back. Drive a nice road trip. And I'm going to Cuba in March.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm excited. What about you?
It's all the ones I have booked are work for a while. We're Cindy from our office and I are going to Los Angeles to pitch journalists.
All right.
New York twice in the next couple months. Yeah, no, it's a lot. We're doing Visit Tucson. I'll be at the New York Times Travel Show for the first time, and so we're gonna make that New York flight happen by force somehow. We're just gonna get people. We're gonna put them on planes. It'll be fine. Yeah.
What about you,
That's
Chris?
great. In terms of, we are hosting everything this year, so everybody's coming here to us from Colorado, from Phoenix. So we're not really going anywhere.
Are there a couple of must-see destinations you always have your visitors see when they come to Tucson?
Always Saguaro National Park.
Yep. That's
always. Anyone who comes to visit, it's one of the unique features of the desert and Tucson. And we always do. I'm a avid consumer of food, and so we always hit all of our favorite restaurants here in town because we have such a fantastic variety.
It's hard to choose. I love that problem.
I love it.
There's so many good restaurants in town. Yep. All right. Well, I think, is there anything else anyone wants to say, or should we wrap up our inaugural show of the business of? This time it was the business of travel and tourism. Stay tuned for the next business of. I already have a few ideas, but I'll keep you curious to see what's up. But tune in to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're always posting about our events. We will definitely share the link to this if you didn't catch all of it. And we thank you, Mark, for having us here today. And I appreciate my guests, Misty, Chris, and Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
The Business of, an informative podcast with Heather Wilburn from the Tucson Metro Chamber, can be heard here continuously on TucsonBusinessRadioX.com.